I'm going to keep this intro brief because I have about an hour and a half of direct from Insomniac info to impart your way. And I'm also likely going to split all this up into 3 30-minute, more digestible chunks. Plus, hopefully, I'll be able to include some raw chunks of new gameplay here and there. Moments where I will do my best to shut up. Now, where did all of this info come from? Last week, I was lucky enough to sit down, remotely, with a whole bunch of Insomniacs as they went into surprising depth about their process with Rift Apart. I also caught half an hour of as yet unseen content on the game. Plus there was a whole bunch of question times for me to probe these devs for more info. And I did. It's not as weird as it sounds. Along with this first section, I'm going to have some subsequent parts, if everything goes to plan, called Building the Weapons, Sights and Sounds, plus I'll have a one-on-one interview where I ask some really technical stuff. Anyway, let's get going. And apologies if you hear some traffic sounds in the background because I'm recording this on the run.
I had a speech prepared, but considering that our event seems to be under assault, I will cut to the chase. Ratchet, I do not know where I would be without you. You are my closest friend, my teammate. And you have given up a lot to... I have repaired the Dimensionator, so you can travel through dimensions and find your family.
Yo, pal, What? Dr. Nefarious?
Ratchet and Clank! What a wonderful surprise! I didn't expect to see you here. Considering my goons were meant to annihilate you 8 minutes ago!
Oh, what do you want, Nefarious?
Yes! Can't anyone print instruction manuals anymore?
From the get-go, creative director Marcus Smith tells me we're in a story of friendship and belonging and empathy for others. The characters and stories of the Ratchet universe have both evolved with the times and yet maintain a sense of timelessness. From the very beginning of Ratchet and Clank's adventures, the two personified the spirit of unlikely heroes. Ratchet, a tinkerer that is the last of his kind who dreams of adventures and finds them in his backyard as it falls from the sky, and Clank, a defective warbot who yearns to be more than his programming, to be a righter of wrongs. While on their own, their limitations can hold them back. Together, with Ratchet's impulsive confidence and Clank's moral compass and cognition, they are duality incarnate, stronger than the sum of their parts. They're always facing challenges that are bigger than themselves, and they are always made better, not because they are alike, but specifically due to their differences. Throughout all of their adventures and conflicts, they are friends first and foremost. This core idea is what the franchise has been from the beginning. Two unlikely heroes, friends until the end against the odds, taking on adventures to stop evildoers. Insomniac says that core idea remains the same in Rift Apart, but they have looked back through the franchise and have identified that when their adventures began back on the PS2 days, the Ratchet games were much more about action. Basically, they were a product of their time, created when games were transitioning from very little story to big overarching tales. Early games focused more on action, and the stories catered to that centering around sort of fighting invading creatures, trying to steal resources from others after overzealous consumption of their own, or stopping the threat of all squishies being turned into robots via bio-obliteration. These stories were funny, and they had positive messages, and they supported the action well. As Insomniac moved into the PS3 era, the franchise took a more introspective approach to storytelling, telling tales that were both bigger in terms of history, but also from a more personal point of view. Insomniac delved into Ratchet's background as the last of his kind, and we learned about a great war that sent the other Lombaxes into hiding. We also learned of Clank's metaphysical origins and rightful position as Time Lord. For a tinkerer in search of adventure, and a robot looking to be someone beyond his programming, the stories of the future series developed broader, more expansive backstories, but retain the ideas of friendship, heart, and humour. Now, as Insomniac moves into the era of PlayStation 5, they say that this new story has become even more personal, as internal struggles take a more central role to focus on how characters relate to one another. Rift Apart continues to centre around the core action-adventure framework, but incorporates modern storytelling elements that will allow players to relate and empathise with these characters even more. With an alternate dimension, Insomniac will also get to show us how disparate versions of the same characters are different due to circumstances, but more importantly, how they are true to each other in terms of their character. Smith tells me that we'll see an older, more mature Ratchet, one still plagued by insecurities but no longer impulsively driven to chase the ghosts of his past. Meanwhile, newcomer Rivet is living in an oppressive world, scrapping every day as a resistance fighter where her impulsive side keeps her alive. The two sides of the same character are explored, and Smith tells me that the team is really proud of the story that they've created. Each of these characters has a thing or two to learn from one another while focusing on the personal relationships in the game, he mentions to me. We're also putting more emphasis on every planet we visit, not only by adding more life to the environments, but by having planets have their own unique story. We want players to feel that they are visiting alien planets and exploring what is happening there, rather than there's a series of action pieces waiting for them upon their arrival. Weaving the big picture story with the planet story has been a lot of fun, and we think players will appreciate the additional layer of storytelling. I think we've made something new that appeals to longtime fans and new players.
To get the Dimensionator away from Dr. Nefarious!
Yes, and quickly. Whatever he has planned, it cannot be good.
Turn yourself in, Wombat!
You're still here? Of course you are! Why wouldn't you be?
I should have known Nefarious would try something like this.
Don't beat yourself up. This'll be just like old times. Come on, it looks like Nefarious landed somewhere near the train station.
As the presentation rolls on, I'm given the chance to hear from Lauren Mee, lead writer on Rift Apart. She says that one of the biggest steps in making sure these characters will be appealing to all audiences was to be very thoughtful about a few things in particular. Like, what do these characters want? What do they need? What can they learn from each other? And maybe, most importantly, how much lore from the previous games is needed to tell these new stories. Mee says that the aim is to create a cast that's relatable and endearing, no matter how much knowledge you have coming into Rift Apart, while responsibly continuing a story that many fans have cared deeply about for years. Longtime fans will be excited to learn that Rift Apart picks up sometime after the events of 2013's Into the Nexus, where we saw Clank whisk the broken Dimensionator off-screen, basically implying that maybe, possibly, he's just going to go fix it to help his friend finally be among his long-lost family. That nearly 10-year cliffhanger is finally going to be addressed. In Rift Apart, we want to answer those questions as well as provide plenty of nods to games past, Mee says. After all, at its core, Ratchet and Clank tell stories that are super universal. They're about family or friendship or heroism, or in the case of our story, a mixture of all three. While we were sure to honour the past, we were very careful about keeping things simple as we moved into the future. Ultimately, we wanted to take what folks love about the franchise and turn it up to 11. She tells me that exciting gameplay is driven by character motivation. The narrative extends out of cutscenes and into the play itself. Every planet has its own self-contained and unique story. All of our characters have full lives and personalities to discover, and there's plenty of humour for everyone. Even characters like a giant junkyard robot who's going through some life issues. You're going to learn some lessons from him, providing he doesn't laser you to death first. All that being said, and what's most exciting about this tale is Insomniac's strange new alternate dimension where Emperor Nefarious steals the Dimensionator and uses it to take our heroes to a universe where he finally always wins. I'm told that players will have the opportunity to see some familiar faces from previous entries in the franchise, while also giving up an entirely new dimensional version of some of the cast. This will let us meet fan-favourite characters with a twist. Me says it's a way to take what's great about the past games and make it fresh for long-term fans and for newcomers alike. Quick examples: famous hoverboard champion and generally laid-back dude Skid McMarks is pretty chill in our dimension. In the alternate one, he's a phantom, a member of the Resistance fighting against Emperor Nefarious. Over there, he's an expert hacker, an inventor, and just overall he's lived a much different life compared to our Skid. Then there's Rusty Pete, a minor antagonist in Tools of Destruction for us, but in the alternate dimension he's become way more successful and stylish. Over there, he's this frequently plastered, grog-loving space pirate known as Pierre Lefer. He's armed with an outrageous accent and goons who love to rhyme in couplets. That, and he's always giving Rivet hell.
It seems fate has brought us together again, ma petite Rivet.
I don't know about your dimension, but out here, things never go according to plan. Improvisation is a skill you learn very fast.
I also have a talent for improvisation.
Well, I can't wait to see you in action. Let's get some phase courts repaired. I hope the fixer is as good as the Morts say he is.
Yes, I hope so too. The bridge seems to be out of commission.
Bet it was a rage! Places like this usually have to fend for themselves against bandits. Or pirates.
Pardon me. Does anyone here know where we can find the fixer?
Guess they're being cautious.
Oh, hello, stranger. Can't talk. Gotta fortify before the next raid.
And hey, speaking of Rivet, who may have once been misinterpreted as simply Ratchet's female Lombax dimensional counterpart, or twinner, when the conversation shifts to Lindsay Thompson, lead animator, it's reiterated to me in no uncertain terms that Rivet is very much an entirely new character with her own distinct personality and lots of history in this unusual dimension. Unlike Ratchet, Rivet has been on her own her entire life, Thompson reminds me. She's never had a best friend to help her through her struggles, no one to celebrate her wins with, and no one to turn to in life's darkest moments. I'm told that Rivet's general deal is that she's kind, she's determined and resourceful, but always level-headed. She'll take an enemy down with a smirk on her face, knowing they've been no match for her strength and wit. She's a lone wolf type, who may not know the best way to act in social situations, but she still knows what she's about. She's on a mission for good, to protect herself and the innocent inhabitants who are tormented by Emperor Nefarious and his colourful goons. I'm told that in many ways, the themes of Rift Apart have been echoed during the development of this game. Smith and his team have had to overcome adversity such as threading the needle between staying true to the franchise past yet bringing forward something bold and new. And then there's obviously the real-world challenges due to confronting a global pandemic. Insomniac has been forced to learn how to adapt and thrive while working largely separately from one another. Anyway, I think that's a good place to cut this topic. Be sure to use the links to go to the other sections that hopefully will have uploaded by now. See you there.